Hello, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're broadcasting to you on Channel 9 and WJOPLP Newburyport, FM 96.3. We're also coming to you on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm delighted and honored to welcome today's guest. Dr. Alexandra Pineros-Shields is Executive Director of Essex County Community Organizing, known as ECCO for short. She's worked in the field of racial justice and advocacy for the past 30 years with numerous organizations. Her advocacy and organizing has centered around cross-class and cross-racial solidarity and political power, and developing popular education spaces for people to empower themselves in their communities. She received her PhD in social policy from the Heller School at Brandeis University, where she now teaches. She is also the chair of the board of directors of the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center. Alexandra, welcome, and thank you so much for taking time to visit the morning show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Well, Alexandra, I was hoping that you would start us off by explaining what Essex County Community Organizing is, and give us some examples of the members of your network and what kinds of values and goals link you all together.
Yes, so ECCO was founded 40 years ago by folks on the North Shore who care deeply about social justice. And we are a network of 40 congregations. So we've grown a lot in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
We are an interfaith network. So we have Christian, Jewish, congregations, and the Mosque in Lynn is sometimes active on various campaigns. One was the raising of the minimum wage ballot question that we worked on the North Shore. And so these congregations are members of ECCO, and they organize together to advance racial justice initiatives and policies, and also to help individuals who are affected by our systems of mass incarceration, both the criminal justice system and the immigration detention system. So sometimes we work to get release of people who are imprisoned from either of those systems. And so we think of ourselves as a racial justice organization, as a economic justice organization as well. And our primary goal is to build solidarity across race, across class, and across faith, to build the political power that we need to advance a social justice agenda on the North Shore, in the state of Massachusetts, and at the federal level as well.
Well, those are all extremely important and wonderful goals, and I'm glad to know you're out there working on them with such a diverse but unified community. You know, I know that ECCO has some very well-defined operating principles, which contain, as I read through them on your website, what I thought were some very profound observations tied to also very pragmatic methods that appear to me to be both bold and inspiring. So I've selected a few, Alexandra, that I'm curious to learn more about from you. And I hope you might explain how and why these operating principles inform ECCO's work, and maybe give us an example of how you put these principles into action. So the first one I wanted to ask you about was this one. Those closest to the pain should lead the work.
Yes. So we believe in radical democracy. We believe that everyone should have decision-making power. So off the bat. And when we think of moving towards justice, of creating a just community and a just world, it is really clear to us that those who are experiencing the worst aspects of our political and economic systems, the worst effects, have insight into those oppressions in ways that those who are not directly impacted do not. And so any solution that is authentic, meaningful, and sustainable over time needs to be led by those who are closest to the pain, who are experiencing the toxicities of society. And we use a metaphor that we borrow from a wonderful book by two law professors, Alani Guarnier at Harvard and Gerald Torres at the University of Texas Law School, called The Miner's Canary, Enlisting Race, Resisting Power, and Transforming Democracy. And in this book, they talk about the metaphor of the canary in the mine, right?
Yeah.
You know it probably.
Yeah.
So the miners would take a canary down into the mine as they were working, and they kept an eye on the canary. And if the canary died, it meant that they had to get out because eventually they would die too. And so what Guarnier and Torres argue in their brilliant book is that race is like the canary. People of color are the first to experience the political and economic toxicities of society. They're the first to fall. But it's about the mine. It's not about the canary.
Right? Yes. The mine has the toxins, but the canary is alert to the toxins.
So I'm Latina. So as people of color, we experience things that are toxic in the mind, but it's the mind that is the problem. And so we're the closest to the pain, but the work is not about fixing the canary. Like it's not about putting a gas mask on the canary, right? Most of our social policies are about fixing the canary. Oh, if we could get the single Latina mom a GED, if we could get so-and-so this or that, we could do some parenting classes, as opposed to saying, if we had subsidized childcare in this nation, if we had affordable quality healthcare, if our educational system was just, if the minimum wage was a living wage, then that single Latina mother, probably most of her problems would be eliminated, right? So what are the interventions to the mind that we can, so the canary is important because the canary tells the miners what's wrong with the mine, and that it's actually a threat to them as well. And so those closest to the pain know the problem, see it better, but it's not about them, it's about the mind. And so that's when the solidarity, right? I have all of these congregations that work together because, Black America was losing its homes to the mortgage crisis 2 decades before hit white America, right? The opioid crisis, the water crisis is not just in Flint. So we could go on and on and on of all these policies that if we don't fix it, it's going to affect everyone.
The pandemic as well, of course. And that what you've been saying seems like that's a great use of the canary metaphor and pointing out that it's not that I love it when you say it's not that the canary needs a gas mask. The mine has to become safe for everybody. So I love that. And that relates to, I think, what you've been saying relates to the second operating principle, which refers to race is a diagnostic tool.
Exactly. So that is a contribution from Guarnier and Torres also, that when you look at it that way, then we can use race to diagnose the oppressions in society. There's nothing wrong with me as a Latina or people of color any more than anybody else, right? Of course, there's a whole bunch of things that I would like to do better, but there's nothing inherently wrong. It's the mind. And so we need to start focusing, and that's what ECCO does, is focus on the mind. Now, the canary needs some help, sure. And there's a lot of social service agencies. I'm not saying that is not important, but that is not going to bring about justice.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Very well put and very wise. Well, another operating principle is the healing and liberation of all depends upon the healing and liberation of all. In other words, you can't have one without the other, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And so, I mean, we're all in the mind together, right?
yes.
So
If the mind is the planet, yes.
we're all in the mind together. And so, as I said earlier, we're a network of institutions of faith. And so in every faith tradition and in humanist ethical frameworks as well, so not only faiths, but any ethical framework has this notion of the interconnectedness of human existence and of all life, not just human life, of all life. I know it's central to the Unitarian faith or the Unitarian tradition. So I want to make sure I expand beyond faith to the Unitarian traditions. And, you know, Martin Luther King spoke about the interconnectedness of, we have a tradition of very wise people throughout the centuries and in many parts of the world and in many traditions talking about interconnectedness as central. So we, you know, talk a lot about reciprocity and mutuality.
Yeah.
And we try to build our way of organizing based on this notion that we're interconnected. And so that's why solidarity is so central to us. And in fact, the country is increasingly more and more polarized. And so the challenge of liberation is to overcome divisions.
Yeah.
What divides us? Faith divides us, race divides us, class divides us. And true liberation is about mutuality and reciprocity across difference.
Right. Yeah. And it strikes me from the way you're putting it also about finding ways to affirm the things that we do have in common instead of emphasizing a lot of the fears that we have over what divides us, because we're all human and we live on one planet and there is no planet B. So we better fix the mind. Use your metaphor. Well, another operating principle is, and I love this one, lasting transformative change is built within communities. Tell us what makes the locale of the community so central to being able to build lasting transformative change.
Well, you know, governments come and go, administrations come and go, and we believe, community organizers believe that power lies in the community. Power lies in people. And so the more strength and more organized a community or a network is, more is possible. One of the things that, one example, really concrete example, is the raising of the minimum wage through the ballot questions. You may remember. We collected signatures. We organized many congregations in many towns in Essex County and cities. And I remember coming to Newburyport and doing a training in someone's backyard in Newburyport. And the unions in Massachusetts had been trying to raise the minimum wage for over a decade without any success. And so they created a coalition, of which ECCO was. Many groups across the state were, called Raise Up Massachusetts. So those were communities coming together. And we decided to try to put a question about raising the minimum wage on the ballot. And as you probably know, you need 62,000 signatures of registered voters. They can't be 20% from any one region. So it has to be pretty well balanced across the state. And we were told that we had to get double that amount because it would be challenged and there would be lawyers looking at each name, each signature, and trying to see the veracity of each, you know, trying to decide whether each signature was authentic or not. And together, we collected 365,000 signatures.
Wow. Wow.
It was extraordinary. ECCO collected about, I think it's like 32,000. So we were very proud because we only had a staff of 3 people. So ECCO staff didn't do it. It was great. It was all of the communities that are connected to ECCO on the North Shore. And we had this wonderful, I think it was December 4th, 2014. We had this wonderful rally in front of the State House. We had, I don't know, it was like 30 boxes of sheets.
Wow.
We had a little rally, some speakers, and then we walked around to Ashburn Place to the state, the Secretary of State's office, and started taking up the boxes in the elevator. Finally, they said, like, you could stop now. We're like, no, we want to hand them all in. The next day, the very next day, the president then of the Senate, Theresa Murray, called a vote and passed the minimum wage in the Senate
Wow.
the next day.
Oh, so community is a force multiplier, as they say. That's a wonderful story.
It's she didn't want to link it to inflation, and she put it a little higher than what we were asking so that it didn't go to the ballot, because they prevented us from going to the ballot. But anyway, so the community has power, and it can be sustained over time.
Right.
Theresa Murray is no longer the state Senate president, but Raise Up Massachusetts and other groups are still working hard.
That's a great story, and it really illustrates the power of community. So, well, the final operating principle I wanted to ask you to comment on was this one: democratic and participatory decision-making uncorks innovation, creativity, and also ownership. So could you say a little bit more about how that informs your work?
Yeah, I mean, these are all interconnected, right? All of these operating principles. And, the first one, I'd like to go back to the first one, right? That those closest to the pain should lead our work. But I don't believe that it makes sense for us to just substitute one power body over another power body. So, right? So yes, we want people who are closest to the pain, people of color, poor folks, anyone who's marginalized, to be leading the work, but in a democratic way. Like, there is a role for all of us to play. And the more democratic we are, the more voices and creativity, the more voices we have at the table in meaningful decision-making, the more creative. Like, I can't, by myself, I could not have come up with all of the campaigns that we run. I've been doing this for 30 years, but our work is made so much more powerful by having democratic processes that allow, and so internally that allow for the generation of brilliant ideas and alternative ideas. And we do that internally as a staff, but also when leaders come together across ECCO, we have various decision-making bodies so that people can have an input. And we have a core strategic team of people of color, of Black and Latino leaders that are generating suggestions and ideas that are then vetted through all of ECCO's membership. And so we have a quite structured way of doing this. And in that way, there's ownership. I often say that my goal is to close ECCO, right? If, let's say that every single community, every town, every congregation knew how to organize itself and demand justice, knew how to, all the techniques of advocacy, that they wouldn't need ECCO anymore, I would be successful. ECCO would be successful.
Right.
So that's what that looks like, is that when everybody has had the experience of making decisions around justice and advocacy and doing advocacy, and they own the work, then they can do this, and ECCO is no longer needed.
Right. It becomes self-generating and self-sustaining, in other words. So, well, as evidence of the creativity of your process, a truly captivating and inspiring vision that ECCO has adopted is the concept of building, I love this phrase, a beloved economy. And I just love that phrase with its historic reference back to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And also it's a phrase John Lewis used to use a lot. So could you fill in this frame of reference for us and its significance in civil rights activism historically?
Yes. I do want to say something before I jump into kind of share with you our thinking and how this developed. I do want to share with you our theory of change very quickly, which is a theory of power. That we're trying to build power so that we can make changes, like we did with Raise Up, where we built enough power that eventually the House also voted to pass the minimum wage rate. And so this theory of power is by a sociologist by the name of John Gaventa. He wrote a brilliant book called Power and Powerlessness, Quiescence and Rebellion in an Appalachian Valley. So his work in Appalachia taught him lessons, and from those he developed this theory. And he says that there are 3 levels of power. The first level is who wins and who loses in a contest. So it could be an election, it could be a soccer game. Who wins and who loses. The second level of power are the rules of the game that will dictate who wins and who loses. So for example, gerrymandering.
Yeah.
And all of what's been happening to curb the ability of Black folks to be able to vote, Latinos to be able to vote, right? Those are the rules of the game that will dictate who wins and who loses.
Yeah.
And then the third level of power are the national discourses, the narratives, the myths that a society has that justify who wins and who loses. So the American dream, pulling yourself up by your bootstrap, the Statue of Liberty, right? The American dream says, well, if you're not making it, then there's something wrong with you, because in America, everybody can make it. This is the land of opportunity.
Right.
It's the Statue of Liberty tells immigrants, you're free here. And so those national myths that justify who wins and who loses. And at ECCO, we have limited resources. And so we actually talk about this theory of power certainly on a weekly basis and sometimes on a daily basis, because we have to make decisions with our few resources. Where do we want to spend our time? So we don't do a lot of first level of power. We try to work at the second level, is changing policies, but mostly we try to work at the third level. And that's really hard, because how do you change a national myth? Like, for example, that love is between a man and a woman. But we changed that as a society. We changed it. There's still a ways to go, but we do have a law that says that the same-sex marriage is lawful. And so that was a shift in the third level of power. And it took many years, and it's not perfect, but it is monumental. And so we have a network of congregations. We have clergy. And the currency of clergy is story.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
The currency of people of scripture, right? Of scriptures, whoever scripture, whether it's Islam or Judaism or Christianity, is about stories. And stories are powerful. And so I believe that ECCO is well positioned to work at that third level. And so the reason why, sharing our theory of change, of how we want to make change by affecting the third level of power, I think is important if you want to understand ECCO's work, but also why we're so clear about our language. So back to the beloved economy. We could have simply put our plan and just did a list of policies, which would be second level of power. But we want to have a framing, because at the end of the day, what we really want is to change the way that our society thinks about economic justice, or justice that in any way. And so we are pushing this idea of a beloved economy because it encapsulates many of our thinking, and we want to challenge the capitalist, especially the form of capitalism that we have now in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say that this is any form of capitalism is not viable or not just, but certainly the kind of capitalism that we have now that concentrates wealth into the 0.5%, while there's so much hunger, there's so much pain. The fact that during the first 4 months of COVID, I haven't seen statistics lately, but I know Mass Budget did an analysis. The 18 billionaires in Massachusetts during the first 4 months of COVID increased their wealth by $1 trillion.
I've seen those statistics. It's jaw-dropping.
It's jaw-dropping, and it's immoral, it's unethical. And so we are asking the question, and it's about the mind, because at the end of the day, we understand that Blacks were ripped from their homelands, and other enslaved people were ripped and enslaved, their families destroyed, for a system, an economic system that was built on their labor.
Absolutely.
And so we cannot untangle race from class, from the economy. So when we say the beloved economy, we think of an economy that is racially just, in which Black folks and Latinos can accumulate the kind of income and wealth that white families are able to. And I like to quote a famous saying by Supreme Court Louis Brandeis. And he wrote this in the 1930s. So we know that at that time there was also gross unequal economic disparity, economic inequality, leading up to the crash of 1929. And he said this, he said, we can have, in this country, we can have democracy, or we can have wealth concentrated into the hands of a few, but we cannot have both. And so when wealth is concentrated into fewer and fewer hands, then it becomes, in order to protect it, we have, those in power have to limit democracy, have to limit justice, and have to use totalitarian means of police control, of state control, because no one is going to volunteer to be at the bottom.
Right, that's right.
Right? People of color, we're at the bottom, and we're not volunteering to be at the bottom. And so you have to keep us in our place. And so we connect state repression to the economic system that we have now. And so in our economic beloved economy agenda, there is a section on police accountability, because we understand that to be connected to economic dynamics.
Absolutely. Well, just the juxtaposition of the word beloved with the word economy is shifting a story at that higher level, I think, because they're just two words we're not accustomed to hearing together at all. And it makes you stop and pause and think. And then you've articulated so beautifully what makes it really important, and the kind of transformation that ECCO has in mind for trying to bring about a beloved economy. So I know this is a big question. It might be hard to summarize, but how are you going to operationalize this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we thought of 4, these are the 4 that we are working on now. They may evolve into others, but for now, in order to be able to make some progress, right? So together with the core strategic team and others in ECCO, this is the 4 policy areas or plan for a 4-step plan. The first one is to build community power and democracy. So we want to make sure, so a beloved we believe that a beloved economy rests on the community having power and the community having democratic decision-making. So that means that we are working on economic decision-making power through participatory municipal budgeting to reflect the community's priorities. And that is really important to us. Right now in the city of Lynn, for example, we were able to secure, and this is connected to number 4, which is fund peace, not force.
Okay.
But they're connected. And so you can see, we have been working since the murder of George Floyd to make some changes. Well, we've been working on police accountability since the murder of Michael Brown in August of 2014. But our most recent work since the murder of George Floyd was around exploring a unarmed crisis response team. And we have gotten the assurance by the mayor and the police chief, acting police chief, to allot $25,000 from the budget, the municipal budget, to explore and develop an unarmed crisis response team.
Oh, what a great idea.
Yeah, and there are a few other cities that are doing this as well, but because we have developed some community power and we're exercising democratic decision-making, we have been able to affect the municipal budget. And so we are continuing to have that as a centerpiece, that it's our taxes. The community should have decision-making power. So it's called participatory budgeting. And it's there are many cities that have some part of their municipal budget that is open for community input. So that's really important. The second kind of policy area is, we call it ensure community representation. And so it's not only that we want to be able to affect the decisions about the budget and other municipal decisions in terms of, and not only ideally, right, not only municipal, but at the state level as well. But we also want representation. So people who have been left out, poor people, people of color, people who have been left out of leadership positions and in public departments, in all areas of municipal government and state government, who are in particular very interested in having municipalities set goals for diversity, and also to make the civil service exam be more open to applicants of color so that we can diversify police forces. Then our third part of the plan is we call fund just economic development. So we want government budgets to prioritize economic development that builds self-determination and power for poor people and people of color. So we want, for example, that there's significant percentage of municipal contracts going to people of color-owned business and worker cooperatives. One example concretely is about 1.5 years ago, ECCO started a worker cooperative, a undocumented women-owned worker cooperative, which cleans homes. And so they are being able to develop some economic self-determination, right? Very important.
Wonderful.
And also we want funding, municipal funding for affordable quality housing and cooperative housing that is affordable, because that is one of the key problems right now in many urban areas, is the cost of housing. That
Absolutely.
astronomical. And then the last one is fund peace, not force. So we want to reallocate funds from policing, incarceration, and other institutions that use violent force towards restorative justice and social programs that promote community well-being and safety. We are very interested in public safety, but we are clear that force is not necessary, is not the only way to arrive at public safety, right?
Alexandra,
Some of the ideas that we have.
Those are, I know we don't have that much time left, but those are just wonderful ideas. And I can hear as you describe them, how they all manifest the operating principles that you were talking about before. So thank you for that. That is so, kind of bold and inspiring. I really appreciate that. Just to close, Alexandra, two things. I wonder if you could say a little bit about, you speak with a great deal of passion and eloquence. I can sense and feel what you get out of this work, because you're making the mine a better place, safe for canaries and miners. But if you could say just a little bit about what people who may not have participated in an organization like ECCO before, what they could look forward to getting out of this type of participation. And then, of course, you need to tell us how people can learn more about ECCO and participate in your initiatives.
So I think that many people are active in ECCO because they love working with folks that are not like them. So people often say that so white folks will tell me, it really makes me feel like I'm doing good in the world because I'm on a team with people of color and we're working towards justice together. So I think having racial solidarity and also class solidarity. And I know Black and Latino leaders comment that it's inspiring to them that people from suburban towns are coming and being active because they know, they say, so people get it, that it's not just our fight, right? It's the whole community's fight. We have to work together. And so across racial lines, across class lines, people find solidarity an important thing. I think that the intensity of the racial crisis and the intensity of the economic crisis, COVID, also people who care about justice, people who care about fairness, maybe not even use the word justice, but about fairness, feel like they have to do something. And so ECCO is a place where we actually get things done. It
sure sounds like it.
There are places you can go and have a good conversation, which is great, or learn, but we learn and we have good conversations, but we are about action. And that's, people want to do something. And so I think that they feel when we finally were able to get into the Lynn Police Department to do implicit bias trainings back in 2016, people felt like they had accomplished something. When we raised the minimum wage, the times that we've gotten people out of immigrant detention, the times that we've made sanctuary cities. So all of those campaigns over the years are a legacy, and people know that we get things done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think those are probably two of the main reasons.
Well, those are pretty powerful main reasons. Another way of putting it is you become part of a beloved community, and then you create a beloved economy by working together. So last question then, Alexandra, how can people learn more about ECCO and how can people help out?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Mary. So our website, Essex County Community Organization, has a lot of information about our past work, our current work. So please sign up for our newsletters, our e-blasts. We on a weekly basis, we send an e-blast out to some call for action. Sometimes it involves, well, right now it only involves Zoom, but oftentimes it's writing a letter, a call, We're not doing much in person. And it also has a donate button. And we're always in search of funding because obviously we can't get government funding because our work is political, not partisan, but it is political. And so we are in need of donations. And so if you feel so moved, we would love for you to fund justice, fund anti-racist work, fund the beloved economy.
Yes, absolutely. It's a terrific website with much, much useful and inspiring information on it. And as with all nonprofits, a very important donate button. Look for the donate button. Alexandra, thank you so much. It's just been wonderful talking with you. You have a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge, and it's just inspiring to talk to you and exciting to learn about your initiatives. Thank you so much for visiting the morning show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate the invitation, and it was lovely to meet you and to be able to share our work with you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So join us next week on the morning show, everybody. Thursday mornings at 9 on Channel 9. See you then. Bye, Alexandra.
Bye-bye.